what a great second quarter for CEO Cristiano Amon. Another one of those ones that kind of was quiet because it was reported on the day that Meta, the Meta bomb went off. But if you wanted something to feel good about that day, Qualcomm.
Yeah, absolutely. So NVIDIA crushed their fiscal Q1 22. They had a beat on the top, they had a beat on the bottom, and they had a raise. So really the trifecta of what you would want. They had another record revenue, another record EPS, and another record EBT quarter. And what I really liked is in their deck they said, we have revenues, that's QCT, revenues exceeding any other fabless company out there. And it's like, do you hear that, NVIDIA? Do you hear that, AMD? Do you hear that, folks out there? I do like that fire. And if Cristiano weren't CEO, we definitely wouldn't have hit that. Handsets, just a banner quarter, 42% improvement. And then rounded out with their growth areas, RF front end at 7%, automotive at 21%, and IoT at 41%. Some people are asking, hey, what's up with this 7% versus 42% on the handset? And it's very simple that RF customers buy earlier than they do on the digital side because they're quite frankly concerned with availability. And potentially the previous quarter was bigger than it should have been, but this quarter for sure was endemic of a buy ahead. So great stuff there. Their guide was really good too. $10 to $11 billion in the top line, $2.80 to $3 on EPS. Net, their growth and diversity strategy is working. Daniel, I gave you a lot of oxygen, buddy.
Yeah, well, you hit a lot of the key points. I had a chance to dig in deeper. You and I actually got a briefing from both their CFO and from Cristiano on the day of earnings. So it was great to get a chance to speak to the senior team, get their takes, ask some questions, try to get beneath the hood and say, hey, what's ahead? You mentioned guide. Just terrific. One of the things that Cristiano said that really stuck with me was, the company is at this point in time by revenue the largest fabless semiconductor manufacturer on the planet. Was basically they're trending towards 35 billion. He said they could be 10. They're nearing 10 billion a quarter on the QCT side. Now, just as a little bit of a reference, I believe NVIDIA is guiding towards about 25 billion. In revenue this year. So NVIDIA, which trades at well over 40 times forward earnings right now, even after it's been after a significant pullback, Qualcomm on the day of its earnings was around 17. So if you look at the way the market treats Qualcomm, I think what was being sort of insinuated through that conversation is, hey, we're fast growth, we're mid double digits, in some case high double digits, we're diversified, which was something that Qualcomm was often accused of not being. Yeah. Because it was basically handsets. And I did a little bit of assessment of this, Pat, when I did a write-up on MarketWatch about this. And I just looked over the past couple of years. In fiscal 1 of 20, for the first time they broke out those business units, it was a $3.6 billion total. So across those business units. At this point now, you've seen handsets have doubled since they first reported. So that was 5 quarters. The handset has more than doubled. The IoT business has more than doubled. The IoT business now is a $1.5 billion a quarter business for the company. We've seen the RFFE grow about 22% from that time 5 quarters ago, but it actually, the full year 5 quarters ago, but that actually has grown much faster if you look at individual quarters before that. It was about 5 quarters ago that started that big ramp where they had their near first $1 billion quarter. And then automotive has also grown about 27%, but you can't forget that's a $13 billion pipeline that is now with their acquisition of Veoneer, the skateboard, the digital chassis acquisition. I want to say, sorry about that, I just totally slipped on it, but it was the ADAS part of the Veoneer business that they acquired. And then on top of that, you add on all these subsets, and you've got a business it's impressive, and about a third to 40% of it on a quarter by quarter basis of QCT is not handset. And I think that's a really important thing. And then behind all this, Pat, is you have a extraordinarily robust licensing business, which doesn't get talked about as much as it needs to be, but is one, extremely high margin, and two, it basically gives Qualcomm a piece of every dollar that comes in the 5G, basically for every 5G thing that sells on the planet. And the one last thing, Pat, I think worth mentioning here is you said this really well, and it goes back a ways, but the sub 5% expectation. Sorry if I doubled up on a couple of things you said, buddy. The sub 5% expectation for Apple over the next couple of years, I think, has really put the market at ease. So you got this kind of opposing forces. You got fast growth, but the company's appreciation in terms of its PE has still been pretty slow. But at the same time, you've got a lot of the things falling into the right place. And lastly, the antitrust space seems to have sort of shifted away from Qualcomm, at least at the moment. And by the way, now that I say that, we'll probably see something get filed today. But in this particular moment in time, it seems that the Alphabets, Amazons, Facebook Metas seem to be much more in the crosshairs, at least at the moment. So
yeah, if I can I do a boomerang on this one?
And by the way, you said a lot. So if I did repeat any data points, it was only because I felt everybody out there needed to hear it twice.
I got you. No, I appreciate that. I just thought because you weren't listening to what I was saying.
Maybe.
No, it's funny. I want to put an asterisk. You had brought it up, kind of the Android growth versus Apple. I wrote a piece in Forbes that essentially said that Qualcomm in 2025 will be Apple proof. And essentially what that means is based on growth in all their other businesses and the growth in Android, Qualcomm is no longer going to be reliant as the biggest driver of their stock. In fact, Cristiano Amon and Akash said they essentially zeroed out Apple at I believe 2025 was the year. Correct me if I'm off on the year, but what I really liked is that they did 60% of their year-on-year on growth in revenues was from Snapdragon, and essentially, it essentially means they're gaining market share in Android, and I think this is part of the becoming Apple proof. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. I think Cristiano maybe 2 quarters ago laid it to rest, but I think repetition is important. That for everybody to know that Qualcomm is essentially becoming Apple proof.
Yeah, it's a big one, and it's a River, by the way, that I was choking on. I could not. The Veoneer, the part of Veoneer that did not spin off was a River. Sometimes I think, Pat, weeks like this when you're just digesting so much, that perfect factoid brain that I try to keep goes imperfect on me.